r/pettyrevenge dad called me fat pig at 1 a.m. so I ruined his Christmas. The refrigerator light cut through the darkness like a spotlight, and there I was, center stage in my own humiliation at 1:17 a.m. on Christmas Eve. What the hell are you doing? Dad's voice slurred from the kitchen doorway. I could smell the whiskey from 6 feet away, that familiar stench that meant I should have stayed in my room. But I'd been lying awake for hours, stomach growling, too anxious about tomorrow's family gathering to eat dinner. Just getting some water, I lied, quickly closing the fridge door. The leftover pizza slice I'd been reaching for might as well have been radioactive the way his bloodshot eyes tracked my movement. Water my ass. He stumbled closer, and I could see that mean drunk look I knew too well. Midnight snacking again, fat pig? The words hit like a physical slap. Fat pig. He'd called me worse over the years, but something about hearing it in the dark, when I thought I was safe, when it was supposed to be Christmas, it cracked something inside me that I didn't know could break any further. I stood there in my oversized pajamas, all 17 years and 180 pounds of me, and felt every cruel comment he'd ever made come flooding back. The time he told Mom not to buy me seconds because the girl's already big enough. When he'd jokingly mooed at me in front of my friends. How he'd pat his own beer gut and say, at least I have an excuse. I was just what? Just gonna stuff your face again? He opened the fridge and gestured at it like he was presenting evidence. Look at all this food for tomorrow and you can't keep your grubby hands off it for one night. My throat burned with unshed tears, but I wasn't going to cry. Not again. Not in front of him. I'd cried enough over the years while he chipped away at whatever confidence a teenage girl could possibly have about her body. Go back to bed before you eat us out of house and home, he muttered, grabbing a beer and popping it open. Because apparently, his alcohol didn't count. I walked past him toward the stairs, my face burning with shame and rage. But as I reached the doorway, something made me turn back. Maybe it was the way he was already dismissing me, or how he grabbed another beer like calling his daughter a pig was just a minor interruption in his drinking schedule. You know what, Dad? My voice came out steadier than I felt. Merry Christmas to you too. He looked up, surprised by my tone. For a second, I saw confusion flicker across his face, like he was trying to figure out if I was being sarcastic. Good. Let him wonder. I went upstairs and sat on my bed, staring at my phone. Tomorrow, Mom's whole family would be here. Dad's parents were driving up from Florida. Everyone would gather around our table, and he'd play the perfect father and husband like he always did. He'd probably even make some comment about keeping an eye on the dessert table while looking at me, and everyone would chuckle because they didn't know how deep his cruelty ran. But I knew things about Dad that would wipe that smug smile right off his face. 3 years of watching, listening, and being ignored had taught me exactly where all his skeletons were buried. And Christmas morning was going to be the perfect time to dig them up. I couldn't sleep after that. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard his voice, fat pig. The words echoed in my head like a broken record, mixing with years of similar moments until I wanted to scream. Instead, I did what I always did when Dad's cruelty kept me awake, I grabbed my laptop. It started innocently enough 3 years ago. I'd been doing homework when Dad forgot to close his email tab. I saw a message notification pop up from someone named Sweet Caroline_Miami with a preview that definitely wasn't work-related. I should have looked away. Should have minded my own business. But when you're 14 and your father constantly tears you down, you hold on to anything that might level the playing field. Now, sitting in my dark room at 2 a.m. on Christmas Eve, I opened the folder I'd been building. Screenshots, saved emails I'd found on our shared computer, photos I'd taken of credit card statements he'd left lying around. 3 years of evidence that Saint Dad wasn't quite the man everyone thought he was. The affairs were the obvious secret. Caroline from his Miami business trips. Then Jessica from the gym. Now it was apparently Brielle from his office, 24 years old according to her Facebook profile that wasn't nearly as private as she thought. I'd watched him text her during family dinners, seen the way he smiled at his phone when Mom was talking about her day. But the financial stuff? That was the real bombshell. Dad made good money as a sales director, but apparently not good enough for his taste. The credit cards Mom didn't know about were maxed out. He'd borrowed against his 401k twice. There was a second mortgage on the house that he'd somehow kept hidden from Mom for 8 months. The best part? He'd been telling his parents, my ultra-conservative, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, grandparents, that he was doing better than ever. Just last month he'd bragged to Grandpa Joe about his investment portfolio and financial planning. They'd eaten it up, proud of their successful son who had his life together. What they didn't know was that their successful son was 3 months behind on the mortgage and had a gambling problem that would make their church ladies club clutch their pearls. I scrolled through photos of betting slips I'd found in his jacket pockets. Horse races, football games, some app on his phone where he'd blown through thousands of dollars chasing losses with bigger bets. Mom thought he worked late all those Tuesday nights. Really, he was at the casino 40 minutes outside of town. My phone buzzed. A text from my cousin Sarah, *, can't wait for tomorrow. Mom's bringing her famous green bean casserole and approximately 1 million questions about your love life lol. Fair warning face with tears of joy, *. Sarah would be there. Uncle Mike and Aunt Linda. Grandma Rose who always slipped me $20 and told me I was beautiful. Grandpa Joe and Grandma Ruth from Florida, who thought their son walked on water. And Dad would sit at the head of the table, carving the turkey like the king of the castle, probably making little comments about portion sizes when he thought no one was listening. Playing the role of devoted family man while his wife sat there clueless about the financial ruin hanging over her head. The fat pig comment wasn't just an insult, it was the last straw. I started organizing files, thinking about timing. When would hurt the most? When would cause maximum damage to his precious reputation? Christmas dinner was supposed to start at 2. By dessert time, everyone would know exactly who Dad really was. I just had to decide which secret to drop first. By 6 a.m., I'd mapped out the entire day like a military operation. But as Christmas morning light crept through my blinds, doubts started creeping in too. What if I was wrong about some of the evidence? What if Dad had explanations I didn't know about? What if I destroyed our family and it turned out I'd misunderstood everything? I could hear Mom downstairs already, humming Christmas carols while she prepped the turkey. She always got up early on holidays, excited like a little kid. The sound made my stomach twist with guilt. Mom didn't deserve this. She'd spent weeks planning today, cleaning the house until it sparkled, buying presents she couldn't really afford because Dad had been tight on cash lately. Now I knew why we'd been eating generic cereal and why she'd been clipping more coupons, but she didn't. My phone buzzed with a text from Dad, *, help your mother with cooking prep. Family will be here at 1. *. No, good morning. No, Merry Christmas. No acknowledgement of what happened last night. Typical. I dragged myself downstairs, where Mom was already deep in holiday chaos. Pots bubbling on every burner, the massive turkey taking up half the oven, and Christmas music playing from her ancient radio. There's my sleepy head. She turned to hug me, flower in her hair. Merry Christmas, sweetie. I was starting to think you'd sleep until dinner. Her smile was so genuine it made my chest ache. How could I destroy that? But then again, how could I let her keep living a lie? Morning, Mom. Merry Christmas. I forced a smile back. What do you need help with? Could you start on the mashed potatoes? And maybe set the dining room table? I want everything perfect for when your grandparents get here. Perfect. That word kept coming up in our house. Dad's perfect image, Mom's perfect dinner, our perfect family Christmas. All of it built on lies. I was halfway through peeling potatoes when Dad wandered in, already dressed in his nice Christmas sweater. He grabbed coffee and barely glanced at me. Morning, beautiful, he said to Mom, kissing her cheek. The same lips that had called me a fat pig 8 hours ago were now playing loving husband. How'd you sleep? Mom asked him, stirring something on the stove. Like a baby. Excited for today. He shot me a warning look over Mom's head. Should be a great family day, right kiddo? The message was clear, keep your mouth shut about last night. I nodded, not trusting my voice. But inside, my resolve hardened. This was exactly the problem. Dad thought he could treat me like garbage in private, then pretend to be father of the year in public. The disconnect was making me sick. Your parents called this morning, Mom told him. They're leaving the hotel around noon, should be here by 1:30. Perfect. Dad's been looking forward to hearing about that promotion possibility at work. My knife slipped, nearly taking off my thumbnail. Promotion possibility? Was he seriously lying about fake career advancement now too? The man was drowning in debt and telling people he might get promoted. Oh, that reminds me, Mom continued innocently. I was balancing the checkbook yesterday and noticed some charges I didn't recognize. Something called Atlantic Financial Services. Are we refinancing something? The kitchen went dead quiet except for the bubbling pots. I kept my eyes on the potatoes, but I could feel the tension radiating off Dad. Oh, that. Yeah, just exploring some investment options. Nothing major. Investment options was a creative way to say borrowed against the house to pay gambling debts. Mom nodded, accepting the lie because she trusted him completely. My heart broke a little more. 3 hours until the family arrived. 3 hours to decide if I was really going through with this. The mashed potatoes weren't the only thing about to get completely destroyed today. The first guests arrived at 1:15, and I watched Dad transform into his holiday performance like flipping a switch. Mom. Dad. You made it. He rushed out to help Grandpa Joe with their luggage, all smiles and warm embraces. How was the drive up from the hotel? Oh, you know your father, Grandma Ruth laughed, swatting at Grandpa Joe playfully. Insisted we leave early because he was so excited to see everyone. I hung back in the doorway, watching Dad play the devoted son. Grandpa Joe looked good for 72, still tall and imposing, the kind of man who'd built his construction business from nothing and had opinions about people who couldn't manage their money. Grandma Ruth was tiny beside him, clutching a perfectly wrapped gift bag and beaming at her successful son. If only they knew their golden boy was about to lose the house. And there's my beautiful granddaughter. Grandma Ruth spotted me and rushed over with one of her crushing hugs. Look at you. You're glowing, sweetheart. Dad's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Even his own mother saw something beautiful in me that he couldn't. The house looks wonderful, dear, Grandma Ruth told Mom, who was wiping her hands on her apron. You've outdone yourself. Oh, it's nothing. I just want everything to be perfect for family. More relatives trickled in over the next half hour. Uncle Mike and Aunt Linda with their twin boys who immediately started tearing through the living room. Sarah arrived with her parents, giving me a conspiratorial grin that meant she had gossip to share later. Grandma Rose came last, moving slowly but carrying her famous apple pie that nobody was allowed to help with. The house filled with laughter and Christmas music and a kind of warmth that should have made me happy. Instead, I felt like I was watching it all through glass, knowing I was about to shatter everything. Dad was in his element, playing host and cracking jokes with Uncle Mike about football. I caught him checking his phone twice, probably texting Brielle while surrounded by his loving family. The audacity was breathtaking. Dinner's ready. Mom called, and everyone migrated to the dining room. The table looked like something from a magazine spread. Mom had used her grandmother's china, the good crystal glasses, cloth napkins folded into perfect triangles. Candles flickered between platters of food that represented hours of work. Dad sat at the head like always, starting to carve the turkey with ceremonial importance. Before we dig in, he said, raising his wine glass, I want to make a toast. My stomach dropped. Of course he'd want to make a speech. This year has been incredible for our family. Business is booming, we're all healthy and happy, and I couldn't ask for a better wife or daughter. He smiled at me like we were best friends. I know I don't say it enough, but you two are my whole world. Everyone raised their glasses, murmuring agreement. Mom's eyes got teary with happiness. Grandma Ruth clasped her hands together like she might cry too. I wanted to vomit. To family, Dad concluded, and to many more years of blessings. To family, everyone chorused. I lifted my glass but couldn't make myself drink. The hypocrisy was choking me. 20 hours ago he'd called me a fat pig. This morning he'd lied to Mom's face about mysterious charges. Right now his phone was probably buzzing with messages from his girlfriend. But here he was, accepting praise for being such a devoted family man. As plates got passed and conversation started flowing, I realized something that made my decision for me. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. Mom deserved to know the truth before Dad's financial house of cards collapsed and took her down with it. His parents deserved to know who they were actually proud of. Everyone deserved better than his lies. I just had to pick the perfect moment to burn it all down. Dinner conversation flowed around me like I was underwater. Sarah was telling everyone about her new boyfriend while Grandpa Joe grilled Uncle Mike about his construction contracts. The twins had already spilled cranberry sauce on Mom's pristine tablecloth, but she just laughed it off because nothing was going to ruin her perfect Christmas. I pushed food around my plate, hyper-aware of every bite I took. Dad hadn't made any comments about my portions yet, but I could feel his eyes tracking my movements. The mashed potatoes I'd made myself suddenly felt like concrete in my mouth. So tell us about this promotion possibility, Grandpa Joe said, cutting into his turkey. Your mother mentioned you might be moving up in the company. My fork froze halfway to my mouth. Here we go. Dad's smile didn't waver, but I caught the slight tension in his shoulders. Well, nothing's set in stone yet. But my boss has been talking about expanding my territory, maybe bringing me into more of the strategic planning side of things. That's wonderful, honey, Mom beamed. He's been working so hard this year. All those late nights and weekend trips. Those weekend trips to Miami suddenly made a lot more sense. I wondered if Caroline knew she was being passed off as a business expense. Hard work pays off, Grandpa Joe nodded approvingly. That's what I always taught you boys. You put in the effort, good things follow. Absolutely. The company's been really impressed with my numbers this quarter. Dad was warming up to his fictional success story. In fact, we've been looking at some investment opportunities. Diversifying the portfolio, you know how it is. I nearly choked on my water. Investment opportunities. The man was 3 months behind on mortgage payments and he was talking about investment portfolios. Smart thinking, Uncle Mike chimed in. Market's been good to us this year too. Linda and I just put the kids' college funds into some mutual funds our advisor recommended. Oh, that reminds me. Grandma Ruth suddenly perked up. Joe, show them the article. What article? Mom asked, refilling wine glasses. Grandpa Joe pulled out his phone, squinting at the screen. There was this piece in the financial section of the paper last week about people our age getting scammed by fake investment companies. These criminals target families, promise huge returns, then disappear with everything. The room went quiet for a beat. Dad's knife stopped moving against his turkey. How awful, Aunt Linda said. Who would do something like that? Desperate people, Grandpa Joe said grimly. People who get in over their heads and think they can gamble their way out. The article said most victims never see it coming because the scammers look just like regular folks. Family men, usually. I watched Dad's face carefully. A muscle in his jaw twitched. Well, he said lightly, good thing we only work with reputable firms. Can't be too careful with the family's financial security. The irony was suffocating. I had screenshots on my phone of betting slips from last Tuesday totaling nearly $3,000. The man lecturing about financial security had blown more money on horse races than Mom spent on groceries in 2 months. Speaking of security, Grandma Rose spoke up from her end of the table. I keep telling all you young people to check your credit reports regularly. Identity theft is everywhere now. Great advice, Dad nodded. We stay on top of all that stuff. Another lie. I'd seen the credit card statements he hid from Mom. If she checked their reports, she'd find accounts she didn't even know existed. Sarah caught my eye across the table, raising an eyebrow. I probably looked like I was about to be sick, which wasn't far from the truth. Every word out of Dad's mouth was making this worse. My phone buzzed under the table. A text notification. Without thinking, I glanced at the screen. It was Dad's phone number, but the message wasn't meant for me. Can't wait to see you tomorrow. Tell your husband the conference is running late, face blowing a kiss. My blood turned to ice. He'd sent a text to Brielle by mistake, somehow our numbers had gotten mixed up in his contacts. I was staring at a message meant for his girlfriend, sent while he was sitting at Christmas dinner with his wife. I looked up to find Dad checking his phone with a frown. He'd probably just realized his error. Our eyes met across the table, and I saw the exact moment he understood what had happened. His face went white. The perfect family Christmas was about to become very imperfect. And I hadn't even started my revenge yet. The accidental text felt like a loaded gun in my hands. Dad's panicked expression told me everything I needed to know. He was terrified I'd screenshot it or show someone. For 30 seconds, we had a silent standoff across Mom's perfectly set table while our family chatted obliviously around us. He was probably calculating damage control, trying to figure out how to spin this if I exposed him right now. What he didn't realize was that one misdirected text was nothing compared to what I actually had planned. I casually deleted the message and set my phone face down, watching relief flood his features. Let him think he was safe. Let him believe his secret was secure because his daughter was too scared or too loyal to destroy Christmas. You okay, sweetie? Mom asked, noticing I'd gone quiet. You look a little pale. Just tired from all the cooking this morning, I lied smoothly. Dad's eyes narrowed slightly. He was learning that his daughter was better at deception than he'd given her credit for. She's been such a help, Mom continued proudly. I don't know what I would have done without her today. She's a good kid, Dad said carefully, testing the waters. Always looking out for family. The subtext was clear, keep looking out for family by keeping your mouth shut. But Grandpa Joe was just getting warmed up on his favorite topic. You know what else that article mentioned? These gambling apps on phones. Apparently, people are losing their houses because they think they can win back their losses with bigger bets. My heart hammered against my ribs. This was too perfect. Grandpa was unwittingly setting up my entire revenge plot. Gambling's always been a problem, Uncle Mike agreed. But now it's right there in your pocket 24/7. Scary stuff. Dad reached for his wine glass, and I noticed his hand wasn't entirely steady. Good thing none of us have to worry about that kind of weakness. Weakness, that word hit differently after years of him calling me weak for crying when he insulted my weight. Apparently, his definition of strength didn't include losing thousands of dollars on horse races while lying to your wife about where the money went. The worst part, Grandma Ruth added, shaking her head sadly, is how it affects the whole family. The article interviewed this poor woman whose husband had hidden all these debts from her. She thought they were doing fine financially, but really they were about to lose everything. Mom made a sympathetic sound. I can't imagine. How could someone hide something that big from their own spouse? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Dad forced a laugh. Beats me. Marriage should be about honesty, right? No secrets between partners. I stared at him in amazement. The audacity was actually impressive. Here he was, preaching about marital honesty while hiding affairs, secret credit cards, and a second mortgage from the woman who trusted him completely. Sarah's phone buzzed, and she glanced at it with a frown. Weird. I just got a text from some random number. My stomach dropped. If Dad had somehow mixed up more contacts. What's it say? One of the twins asked nosily. Just gibberish. Probably a spam thing. She showed her phone to Aunt Linda, who squinted at the screen. Conference running late. That's oddly specific for spam. Dad had gone completely rigid. I realized what must have happened. In his panic about the misdirected text to me, he'd probably fumbled his phone and sent the same message to multiple wrong numbers. Sarah was his niece, and if our contacts had gotten scrambled somehow. You know what's really terrible about technology? I said loudly, drawing attention away from Sarah's phone. How easy it is to accidentally send things to the wrong people. Like, one wrong tap and suddenly everyone can see stuff that was supposed to be private. Dad's wine glass stopped halfway to his lips. He understood the threat perfectly. Accidents happen, he said evenly. The important thing is fixing mistakes before they cause real damage. True, I smiled sweetly. Although sometimes the damage is already done. Sometimes people deserve to know the truth, even if it's messy. The table had gone quiet, sensing undercurrents they couldn't quite identify. Mom looked between Dad and me with confusion, probably wondering why we were having some sort of philosophical debate about technology mishaps. Well, Grandma Rose said brightly, who's ready for dessert? Perfect timing. Because I was definitely ready to serve up something sweet. The dessert transition gave me the perfect opportunity. While Mom orchestrated the clearing of dinner plates and the ceremonial presentation of Grandma Rose's apple pie, I volunteered to help in the kitchen, and more importantly, to grab Dad's laptop from his home office. Just want to show everyone those vacation photos from last summer, I announced cheerfully when Mom asked what I was doing with the computer. Dad's fork clattered against his dessert plate. I don't think anyone wants to see those old pictures right now. Are you kidding? Sarah perked up. I love looking at vacation photos. Didn't you guys go somewhere tropical? Miami, I said innocently, opening the laptop at the dining room table. Dad had several business trips there. Really seemed to love the atmosphere. The laptop connected to our Wi-Fi automatically, and I made a show of pulling up what looked like a photo folder while actually navigating to Dad's email account that he'd foolishly set to auto-login. Oh, this is interesting, I said, tilting the screen slightly away from where Dad was sitting but perfectly visible to Grandma Rose beside me. Dad, you have a lot of unread emails. Someone named Caroline sent you about 15 messages just today. His chair scraped against the floor as he started to get up. You know what, let's skip the photos. I should check those work emails later. Caroline Martinez, I read from the screen, clicking on the most recent message. She says, oh my. Grandma Rose leaned closer, her elderly eyes squinting at the screen. What she saw made her hand fly to her chest. What does it say? Grandpa Joe asked from across the table. I turned the laptop so more people could see Caroline's latest message, complete with a photo attachment that definitely wasn't work appropriate. The subject line alone, missing you already, can't wait for New Year's in Cancun, was enough to make the implications crystal clear. That's. Mom started, but her voice died as she processed what she was seeing. Who exactly is Caroline Martinez? Aunt Linda asked slowly. Dad lunged for the laptop, but I'd already scrolled down to show the message thread. Months of exchanges between my father and his Miami girlfriend, talking about hotel rooms and stolen weekends and how much they loved their special arrangement. This has to be some kind of mistake, Mom said weakly. Right? This is just work correspondence that looks wrong out of context. I clicked on another email thread. What about Jessica from Gold's Gym? She sent some interesting photos too. The dining room erupted in chaos. Grandma Ruth started crying. Grandpa Joe was turning red, demanding explanations. Uncle Mike was trying to shield the twins' eyes from whatever was on the laptop screen while simultaneously craning his neck to see it himself. Turn that off, Dad ordered, his voice shaking with rage. Right now. Why? I asked pleasantly. I thought we were all about family honesty. No secrets between partners, remember? Mom had gone completely white. She reached for the laptop with trembling hands, scrolling through messages that detailed her husband's affairs in graphic detail. Each email she read seemed to break something else inside her. How long, she whispered. Dad looked like a trapped animal. Honey, I can explain. How long have you been cheating on me? It's not what it looks like. These women, they don't mean anything. 3 years. Mom's voice cracked as she found emails dating back to when Caroline first started. You've been lying to my face for 3 years. Sarah grabbed one of the twins who was trying to climb on a chair to see the computer screen better. The room felt like it was spinning out of control, exactly the way I'd wanted it to. But watching Mom's heart break in real time was harder than I'd expected. The chaos I'd unleashed was spreading like wildfire, but I wasn't done yet. While everyone was still reeling from the affair revelations, I navigated to Dad's banking apps that were conveniently saved in his browser. Mom, I said quietly, getting her attention away from the devastating emails. There's something else you need to see. I think we've seen enough, Grandpa Joe said firmly, his face stern with disappointment as he stared at his son. No, I insisted. Mom needs to know about the money. Dad shot up from his chair so fast he knocked over his water glass. That's enough. Give me the laptop right now. What money? Mom asked, her voice hollow. She looked like she'd aged 10 years in the last 5 minutes. I pulled up the banking statement for the account Mom didn't know about. Dad's been hiding credit cards from you. This one has a balance of $37,000. 37. Mom's hand flew to her throat. That's impossible. We don't have any credit cards with balances like that. Actually, you have 3 of them. I clicked through the tabs I'd already prepared. This one's maxed at 15,000, this one at 22,000, and this beauty is sitting at 37. Uncle Mike whistled low. Jesus, that's 74,000 in credit card debt, I finished helpfully. But wait, there's more. Dad was backing toward the kitchen like he was planning to run. Stop talking. Right now. The second mortgage. I announced like a game show host revealing the grand prize. Took out a loan against the house 8 months ago for $85,000. Guess what he used it for? I pulled up his gambling app account before anyone could stop me. The transaction history was a nightmare of losses stretching back months. 500 here, 2,000 there, one particularly spectacular day where he'd lost $8,000 on college basketball games. Oh my God, Aunt Linda breathed. He's been gambling. Not just gambling, I corrected. Losing spectacularly at gambling. Look at this beauty from last week, $3 grand on horse races. That's more than Mom spends on groceries in 2 months, but hey, Dad was sure Lucky Lightning was going to come through in the 4th race. Grandpa Joe's face had gone from red to purple. You borrowed against your house to fund gambling debts. Dad, please tell me this isn't real, Mom whispered, staring at the screen in horror. Dad finally exploded. You want to know what's real? I'll tell you what's real. I work 60 hours a week to support this family, and I come home to a wife who's always stressed about money and a daughter who does nothing but eat us out of house and home. The room went dead silent. Even the twins stopped fidgeting. There it is, I said calmly. The real dad, everyone. Not the devoted family man who makes toasts about blessings. This is what he calls me when no one's listening. What did you just say to my granddaughter? Grandma Rose's voice cut through the silence like a blade. All 5 feet of her was radiating fury. She's been snooping through my private accounts, violating my privacy. You called her fat. Grandma Ruth was crying harder now. How could you say something so cruel? It was last night, I continued, feeling oddly detached from the destruction I'd caused. 1:17 a.m. on Christmas Eve. He called me a fat pig for trying to get water from the kitchen. Sarah gasped. Uncle Dad, no. Please tell me you didn't actually say that. But Dad was past denying anything now. He was cornered, exposed, and lashing out at everyone within reach. You know what? Fine. You all want the truth. Here's the truth about this perfect family Christmas. What came out of his mouth next would make sure this was the last Christmas dinner our family would ever have together. Dad's explosion was nuclear. All his careful facades crumbled at once, and what poured out was years of resentment he'd apparently been storing up. You want honesty? Fine. I'm miserable. I've been miserable for years in this suffocating house with a wife who nags me about every penny and a daughter who... He gestured wildly at me. Look at her. She's 17 and already bigger than her mother. Do you know how embarrassing it is when my coworkers see her? When I have to introduce her as my kid? Grandma Rose stood up so fast her chair tipped backward. How dare you? And you? Dad whirled on Mom. Always acting like such a martyr. Oh, money's tight, we need to budget. Maybe if you got an actual job instead of playing house all day, I wouldn't have to work myself to death to keep this family afloat. Mom looked like he'd physically struck her. I wanted to work. You said you wanted me home with. Because I thought you'd be good at it. I thought you'd manage the household properly, not let our daughter turn into. He waved his hand at me again, too disgusted to finish the sentence. Uncle Mike stood up, his jaw set. That's enough. You don't talk about family like that. Family? Dad laughed bitterly. This isn't a family. This is a prison. You think I wanted to sneak around with other women? You think I wanted to gamble? It's called escapism. When your home life is this depressing, you find ways to feel alive again. By lying to everyone who loves you. Sarah's voice was shaking with anger. By stealing money and calling your own daughter names. By doing whatever it takes to survive. Dad's voice cracked. Do you know what it's like to feel trapped? To look at your life and realize this is it. This is all you get. A boring wife, a disappointing daughter, and bills you can never quite catch up on. The words hit Mom like physical blows. She was crying silently, mascara running down her cheeks while her husband destroyed everything she thought she knew about their marriage. But Grandpa Joe had heard enough. When he spoke, his voice carried the authority of a man who built a business from nothing and raised 4 kids without losing his humanity. Son, I am ashamed of you. Dad's rant died in his throat. For all his rebellion, disappointing his father still had the power to stop him cold. Ashamed? Grandpa continued, standing slowly. I raised you better than this. Your mother and I sacrificed for decades to give you opportunities, to teach you values. And this is what you've done with it. Cheated on your wife. Lied about gambling away your family's security. Called your daughter cruel names. Dad, you don't understand the pressure. I understand plenty. I understand that when times got tough for your mother and me, we worked harder. We didn't blame each other. We didn't seek comfort in other people's beds. And we sure as hell never took our frustrations out on our children. Grandma Ruth was sobbing openly now. Where did we go wrong? How did we raise a son who could be so heartless? You want to know the real kicker? I said into the awful silence. My voice sounded strange, like it was coming from someone else. All this time, I thought there was something wrong with me. I thought I was the problem. Fat, embarrassing, disappointing. I've spent 3 years hating myself because of things he said. Dad's face had gone ashen. Maybe seeing the damage reflected in his parents' eyes was finally getting through to him. But you know what I realized tonight? The problem was never me. It was him. He's the liar, the cheater, the person who can't handle his own life without destroying everyone around him. I looked around the table at my family, mom crying, grandparents horrified, cousins shocked into silence. And now you all know it too. The aftermath of Dad's meltdown was like watching a bomb go off in slow motion. For several seconds, nobody moved or spoke. The only sounds were Mom's quiet crying and the Christmas music still playing mockingly from the kitchen radio. Then Grandma Rose broke the silence in the most unexpected way possible. "Good for you, sweetheart." Everyone turned to stare at her. She was looking directly at me, her weathered hands clasped together, her eyes fierce despite the tears. "Good for you for standing up to him. Someone needed to." "Mom," Uncle Mike said quietly, "maybe we should." "No." Grandma Rose's voice got stronger. "I've been watching this for years. The little comments, the way he talks to this beautiful girl like she's nothing. I kept thinking it wasn't my place to interfere, but I should have said something long ago." Dad looked like he'd been slapped. "You don't know what you're talking about. You don't live here, you don't see. I see a man who's forgotten what family means," Grandpa Joe cut him off. "And I see a brave young woman who just saved her mother from years more of lies." That's when Mom finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "The house. Are we going to lose the house?" The question hung in the air like a death sentence. Dad's face went through several expressions before settling on defensive anger. "We'll figure it out. I always figure it out." "How?" Mom's voice was getting stronger, hysteria creeping in around the edges. "How do you figure out $74,000 in credit card debt? How do you figure out being 3 months behind on a second mortgage I didn't even know existed?" Sarah was frantically Googling something on her phone. "Uncle Dad, it says here that if you're 3 months behind on mortgage payments, the bank can start foreclosure proceedings. Is Mom going to be homeless?" "Of course not," Dad snapped, but he wouldn't meet anyone's eyes. "It's not that simple." "Actually, it kind of is," Uncle Mike said grimly. He worked in construction, dealt with foreclosures regularly. "If you're 3 months behind and you've already borrowed against the equity, you're in serious trouble." Mom was staring at Dad like she'd never seen him before. "When were you going to tell me? Were you just going to let me come home one day to find a notice on the door?" "I was handling it." "By gambling more money you don't have?" Aunt Linda's voice was sharp with disbelief. "By taking business trips to see your girlfriend while your wife clips coupons to save money on groceries. Those trips were investments in my career." "Stop lying." The words exploded out of me with surprising force. "Just stop. There's no promotion, there's no investment portfolio, there's no master plan to fix this. You're drowning and you've been dragging Mom down with you while pretending everything's fine." Dad's mask finally slipped completely. The charming family man disappeared, leaving behind someone I barely recognized, desperate, cornered, and mean. "You know what your problem is?" he snarled at me. "You think you're so smart, digging through my private business like some kind of detective. But you're just a bitter teenager who can't handle criticism about her weight." "There it is again," Grandma Rose said sadly. "Even now, caught red-handed, he's still trying to hurt her. She humiliated me in front of my entire family." "You humiliated yourself," Grandpa Joe said firmly. "She just showed everyone who you really are." Mom stood up suddenly, swaying slightly. "I need air. I need to think." She walked toward the kitchen, then stopped and turned back. 23 years of marriage. 23 years, and I don't know you at all." As she disappeared into the kitchen, I realized something that made my stomach drop. The revenge felt hollow now. I'd wanted to hurt Dad the way he'd hurt me, but watching Mom's world crumble was breaking my heart. And we still had to figure out how to save the house. The kitchen had become a war zone of abandoned Christmas dishes and shattered dreams. I found Mom standing at the sink, gripping the edge so hard her knuckles were white, staring out the window at nothing. "Mom." She didn't turn around. "How long have you known?" The question I'd been dreading. "About the affairs?" 3 years. The gambling and debt stuff I figured out more recently. 3 years. She let out a bitter laugh. "My 17-year-old daughter knew my husband was cheating, and I had no idea." "What does that say about me?" "It says he's a really good liar. Or I'm a really bad wife." "Mom, no. This isn't your fault. Isn't it?" She finally turned to face me, and the pain in her eyes was devastating. All those times he said we needed to budget more carefully, I believed him. When he said his business trips were for career advancement, I was proud of him. When he started working late every Tuesday, I made sure dinner was waiting when he got home. From the dining room, we could hear raised voices. Grandpa Joe was apparently giving Dad the lecture of a lifetime while someone, probably Sarah, was trying to calm the twins, who were getting upset by all the adult drama. "I should have known," Mom continued. "The signs were all there. The secretive phone calls, the unexplained charges, the way he'd snap at you for no reason. A better wife would have." "Stop." I grabbed her hands. "You are not responsible for his choices. You loved him and trusted him. That's what wives are supposed to do. But look where it got me." Her voice cracked. "I'm 45 years old with no job, no savings, and apparently no house. What am I supposed to do now?" Before I could answer, Aunt Linda appeared in the kitchen doorway. "Sorry to interrupt, but we need to talk about immediate next steps. Mike's been making some calls." We followed her back to the dining room, where the family had apparently held a crisis meeting while we were gone. Dad was slouched in his chair looking defeated, while everyone else wore expressions ranging from concerned to furious. "Okay," Uncle Mike said, consulting his phone. "I talked to my buddy who's a real estate attorney. The good news is you're not getting evicted tomorrow. The bad news is you've got maybe 6 weeks before the bank can legally start foreclosure proceedings." 6 weeks, Mom repeated numbly. "The credit card situation is actually more urgent," Aunt Linda added. "Those interest rates are killing you." Every month you don't pay, the balance grows. How much would it take to stop the foreclosure? Grandma Ruth asked quietly. Uncle Mike checked his notes. To bring the second mortgage current and pay the minimum on the credit cards. About $40,000, just to buy time. A heavy silence fell over the room. $40,000 might as well have been $40 million for most of us. We could help with some of it, Grandpa Joe said slowly. Your mother and I have savings, but not nearly enough for the full amount. I won't take money from my parents, Dad said suddenly, speaking for the first time since his breakdown. I got into this mess, I'll get out of it. How? Sarah asked bluntly. You just admitted you've been gambling away thousands of dollars. Why would anyone trust you to handle more money? Dad's face flushed. I can stop gambling anytime I want. Famous last words of every addict ever, Uncle Mike muttered. That's when I realized something that made my blood run cold. In my quest for revenge, I'd exposed Dad's problems, but I hadn't actually solved anything. If anything, I'd made it worse. Now everyone knew the family was financially ruined, but we still had no way to fix it. And Christmas wasn't even over yet. The reality of what I'd unleashed was starting to hit me like a freight train. Everyone was looking at each other with that helpless expression people get when they realize good intentions aren't enough to fix a crisis this big. Wait, Sarah said suddenly, her phone buzzing in her hand. This is weird. I just got another text from that random number. My heart stopped. In all the chaos, I'd completely forgotten about Dad's earlier texting mishap. What's it say now? Aunt Linda asked absently, still focused on the financial paperwork Uncle Mike had spread across Mom's ruined tablecloth. Sarah frowned at her screen. It says, baby, your husband suspect anything yet? Maybe we should cool it until after New Year's. Who is this person? The room went dead quiet. Dad's face turned the color of old snow. Oh my God, Sarah continued, the pieces clicking together. This is meant for one of his girlfriends, isn't it? Dad's been accidentally texting me instead of. Give me that phone, Dad lunged across the table, but Sarah was already showing the message to her mother. How many women are there? Aunt Linda demanded, staring at the screen in disgust. Because this one is talking about her husband. You're not just cheating, you're helping someone else cheat too. Mom made a sound like all the air had been knocked out of her lungs. She's married. They're all married, I said quietly. The words just tumbled out before I could stop them. Caroline has 3 kids. Jessica's husband thinks she's at book club on Thursday nights. And Brielle. Stop talking, Dad hissed, but it was too late. Brielle is your boss's daughter-in-law. Uncle Mike whistled low. Jesus Christ, you're sleeping with your boss's daughter-in-law. Do you have a death wish? That explains why there's no promotion, Grandma Rose said with devastating clarity. You can't exactly ask for a raise when you're having an affair with the boss's family. Dad buried his face in his hands. You don't understand. It's complicated. These relationships, they're not what you think. What I think, Grandpa Joe said with ice-cold fury, is that my son has become someone I don't recognize. Someone who lies to his wife, steals from his family, and corrupts other people's marriages. Sarah's phone buzzed again. Oh, for crying out loud. Now she's sending photos. She glanced at the screen and immediately flipped it face down. Gross. I'm blocking this number. This is a nightmare, Mom whispered, sinking back into her chair. It just keeps getting worse. That's when the landline started ringing. Our actual house phone that nobody ever called except telemarketers and my school's automated attendance system. I'll get it, Aunt Linda said, probably grateful for any distraction from the ongoing disaster. She disappeared into the kitchen and came back 30 seconds later with an expression that made my stomach clench. That was someone from Atlantic Financial Services. They want to know when you're planning to make your December payment on the personal loan. Apparently, you're 10 days past due on that one too. What personal loan? Mom asked weakly. Dad's head shot up. That's not. I thought I had until the 15th. Personal loan. Uncle Mike was already pulling out his phone. How much personal debt are we talking about here? Because I thought we'd covered everything. The awful truth was dawning on all of us at once. The credit cards and second mortgage weren't the end of Dad's financial destruction. They were just the tip of the iceberg. How much do you owe Atlantic Financial? Grandpa Joe asked in the voice of a man who already knew he wouldn't like the answer. Dad's silence stretched so long that Mom started crying again. Which was when someone knocked on our front door. On Christmas afternoon, when our entire extended family was here, when we were in the middle of the worst crisis our family had ever faced. Nobody just drops by on Christmas Day. Unless they're coming to collect money you don't have. Uncle Mike went to answer the door while the rest of us sat frozen around the wreckage of Christmas dinner. Through the front window, I could see a black sedan parked in our driveway, the kind of car that screamed official business even on a holiday. Mr. Thompson. A woman's voice carried from the foyer, professional and polite in that particular way that meant serious trouble. I'm Angela Morrison from Pinnacle Recovery Services. I tried calling several times this week about your outstanding obligation. My stomach dropped to my shoes. A debt collector. On Christmas Day. At our family dinner. There's been some mistake, I heard Uncle Mike saying. This is a private family gathering. Sir, I understand this is inconvenient timing, but Mr. Thompson has been avoiding our calls for 3 weeks. Federal regulations allow us to make contact at his residence when standard collection methods have been unsuccessful. Dad shot up from the table like he'd been electrocuted. I'll handle this, he muttered, practically running toward the front door. But it was too late. Angela Morrison had already stepped into our foyer, and her voice was carrying clearly to the dining room where our entire family sat listening. Mr. Thompson, you currently owe $28,400 to Pinnacle Recovery on behalf of your creditors. Our records show you haven't made a payment in 11 weeks. $28,000. Mom's voice was barely a whisper. Sarah was frantically Googling on her phone again. Pinnacle Recovery Services is a debt collection agency, she announced grimly. They buy old debts from credit card companies and try to collect them. 11 weeks, Grandma Ruth was counting on her fingers. That's since September. He hasn't been paying his bills since September. From the foyer, we could hear Dad's voice getting higher and more desperate. Look, I understand your position, but this is Christmas Day. My family is here. Can't we schedule something for after the holidays? Mr. Thompson, Christmas was last year too, and the year before that. Your account has been in our system for almost 6 months. At what point do you plan to take responsibility for these obligations? Aunt Linda stood up and walked toward the kitchen, probably trying to get a better view of what was happening. The rest of us just sat there like we were watching a car crash in slow motion. The thing is, Dad was saying, I'm expecting a significant bonus in January. A promotion actually. If you could just give me until then. We've heard similar promises multiple times, sir. Our records show you told our representative in October that you'd have payment by Thanksgiving. In November, you promised payment by Christmas. We need concrete action, not more promises. Mom buried her face in her hands. How much debt is there total? How much don't I know about? Uncle Mike was scribbling numbers on a napkin, adding up everything we discovered so far. $74,000 in credit cards, $85,000 second mortgage, $28,000 to the debt collector, plus whatever he owes Atlantic Financial. That's over $180,000, Grandpa Joe said in the tone of someone confirming a terminal diagnosis. From the foyer, Angela Morrison's voice was getting firmer. Mr. Thompson, I'm authorized to discuss payment arrangements, but I need to see good faith effort today. Even a partial payment would show your willingness to resolve this matter. Today. I don't have access to that kind of cash on Christmas. How much do you have access to, sir? The question hung in the air like a guillotine blade. Because we all knew the answer. Dad had access to nothing. The checking account was probably overdrawn. His credit cards were maxed. His parents' trust was destroyed, and his wife had just learned her entire marriage was built on lies. I need to discuss this with my wife. Of course. I'll wait in my car for 10 minutes while you have that conversation. But Mr. Thompson, this debt isn't going away. If we can't reach a payment arrangement today, our next step is legal action. The front door closed, and Dad slunk back to the dining room looking like a man facing his own execution. Mom didn't even look up at him. She just asked the question we were all thinking. What else? What else haven't you told me? The debt collector sitting in our driveway was apparently just the opening act. Dad's phone started ringing the moment he walked back into the dining room, and when he saw the caller ID, his face went from pale to green. Who is it? Mom asked without looking up from the napkin where Uncle Mike had been tallying our family's financial apocalypse. Atlantic Financial, Dad mumbled, declining the call. It immediately started ringing again. Answer it, Grandpa Joe commanded. Put it on speaker. We're all in this now. Dad's hands were shaking as he accepted the call and hit the speaker button. A cheerful automated voice filled our destroyed dining room. Happy holidays. This is a courtesy reminder that your payment of $4,700 was due December 15th. To avoid additional fees and potential legal action, please make your payment immediately by pressing 1 or hold for a representative. $4,700. I watched Uncle Mike add that to his running total on the napkin, his face grim. That's it, Sarah announced, looking up from her phone. I've been researching debt collectors, and once one shows up at your house, others follow. They share information. Uncle Dad, how many different companies are you behind with? Before Dad could answer, our landline rang again. Then his cell phone. Then Mom's phone started buzzing with a number she didn't recognize. It's like they coordinated this, Aunt Linda said in amazement, watching 3 different phones ring simultaneously in our dining room. Mom answered her phone with trembling hands. Hello. Mrs. Thompson. This is Marcus from Bridgestone Collections regarding your husband's outstanding obligation to CitiCard. We've been trying to reach Mr. Thompson for several weeks. I don't know anything about CitiCard, Mom said weakly. Ma'am, the account shows a balance of $19,400 with no payments received since August. We need to arrange immediate payment to avoid further collection activities. Uncle Mike's napkin was running out of space. We were approaching $200,000 in total debt, and the collectors were apparently working Christmas Day overtime. August? Mom's voice cracked. He hasn't paid anything since August. That's when Sarah made a discovery that sent our crisis into overdrive. Oh no, she said, staring at her laptop screen. Uncle Dad, I just googled your name to see what comes up, and this is really bad. What now? Grandma Ruth asked wearily. There's a public record of a lawsuit. Someone called Premier Legal Associates filed suit against him 2 weeks ago for $36,000 in unpaid business loans. Dad's face went completely white. That's not, they can't do that without notifying me first. They did notify you, Sarah read from the screen. Says here they sent registered letters to your workplace and this address. When you didn't respond, they filed for default judgment. Uncle Mike was frantically Googling on his own phone now. Default judgment means they can start garnishing wages and seizing assets immediately. How did you miss court documents? I thought I had more time to work things out, Dad said desperately. These companies, they send so many letters threatening legal action. Most of it's just scare tactics. $36,000 in business loans. Mom's voice was hollow with shock. What business loans? You work for a company. You don't have a business. The silence that followed was deafening. Even the debt collectors seemed to sense they'd called at the worst possible moment. All the phones had stopped ringing, leaving us in the eye of our financial hurricane. Dad opened and closed his mouth several times before any words came out. I may have borrowed some money to start a consulting business. As a backup plan. In case the promotion didn't work out. A consulting business? Grandpa Joe's voice was deadly quiet. What kind of consulting business requires $36,000 in startup loans? It was supposed to be a sure thing. My friend Derek said these corporate training seminars were guaranteed money makers. That's when I realized something that made my blood freeze. Derek Martinez, I said slowly. Caroline's husband Derek. Dad's guilty expression told us everything we needed to know. He'd borrowed money to go into business with the husband of one of his girlfriends, who had no idea his wife was cheating. Our Christmas was about to get so much worse. The revelation about Derek Martinez was the final domino that brought everything crashing down. Dad had literally borrowed money from his girlfriend's husband to fund a fake business while sleeping with the man's wife. The audacity was so breathtaking that for a moment, nobody could even speak. Then Grandpa Joe did something I'd never seen before in my 17 years. He laughed. Not a happy laugh, but the bitter sound of a man whose disappointment had transcended normal human emotion. You borrowed money from the husband of your mistress, he said, shaking his head in amazement. Son, I've seen people make bad decisions in my 72 years, but this is spectacular. That's when Sarah's phone rang with yet another unknown number. She answered it on speaker without thinking. Sarah. This is Derek Martinez. I think your uncle has been getting my wife's text messages by mistake, and I need to know what the hell is going on. The dining room went nuclear. Derek had apparently gotten suspicious when Caroline's behavior changed, checked her phone records, and started putting pieces together. Dad's accidental text to Sarah's number had been the final clue Derek needed to confirm his worst fears. Your uncle owes me $36,000 for a business that doesn't exist. Derek's voice was shaking with rage. And according to these text messages, he's been sleeping with my wife for 3 years. I want my money back, and I want it now, or I'm calling the police about fraud. Dad tried to grab Sarah's phone, but she held it away from him. Derek, this is Sarah, his niece. We're just finding out about all of this ourselves. Put him on the phone. Right now. The next 10 minutes were brutal. Derek had evidence of everything, the fake business documents, the loan agreements, Caroline's confession after he confronted her with the text messages. He'd already filed a police report for fraud and was demanding immediate repayment. When the call ended, we all just sat in the wreckage of what used to be Christmas dinner. Well, Mom said with surprising calmness, I guess that settles it. She stood up and walked to the kitchen, returning with a notepad and pen. We watched in fascination as she started writing with businesslike efficiency. I'm making a list, she announced. Everything we need to do to clean up this mess. Honey, Dad started. No. Mom's voice cut like steel. You don't get to talk anymore. You've done enough talking. She turned to face our shell-shocked family. Uncle Mike, what's the number for that real estate attorney? I need to know my options for keeping the house if I file for divorce immediately. Mom, I said softly, are you sure? She looked at me with clear eyes for the first time all day. Sweetheart, staying married to him means I'm legally responsible for debts I didn't know existed. The only way to protect what's left is to cut ties completely. Grandpa Joe nodded approvingly. Smart thinking. What else do you need? A lawyer, a financial advisor, and apparently a locksmith. She made notes as she talked. Also, Dad, you're paying for Caroline's divorce proceedings since you helped destroy her marriage too. I don't have money for. Then you'll get a second job. Or a third job. You'll work every hour you're not sleeping until these debts are paid and these families are compensated. Watching Mom take control was like seeing her wake up from a long nightmare. The broken woman from an hour ago was gone, replaced by someone with focus and determination. Angela Morrison, the debt collector, was still waiting in our driveway. Mom walked outside and spent 20 minutes negotiating payment plans that actually made sense, using the threat of Dad's upcoming divorce and asset seizure as leverage. By the time the sun set on our disaster Christmas, Mom had appointments with 3 different lawyers, a plan to refinance the house in her name only, and a support network of family members ready to help her rebuild. Dad would be moving out by New Year's. The affairs were over, Caroline was getting divorced, Jessica's husband had been called, and Brielle was about to find out that her father-in-law knew about their relationship. As for me, I learned that revenge wasn't nearly as satisfying as I'd expected. But watching Mom find her strength again, that was worth everything. 6 months later, Mom got a job at Uncle Mike's construction company managing their books. We kept the house. Dad was working 3 jobs to pay down debts and living in a studio apartment across town. And I learned that sometimes the best thing you can do for someone you love is show them the truth, even when it hurts. Even when it ruins Christmas. Especially then.